Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a well-deserved reward review for the KV-1SA. But interesting this year, this is a Tier 5 premium heavy tank. In past years, since this well-deserved reward has happened, we have seen the Super Hellcat, the Super Chaffee, we have seen the return of the T50-2, and the return of the 2801. Now, all four of those were kind of return vehicles that have been either moved around or re-tiered or taken out, things like that. This year, it is a completely different idea. It is a tank that hasn't been around. So maybe the Wargaming has run out of that particular kind of tank. But if you've been around long enough, then you can get yourself a KV-1SA. You will have it in your garage if you have been around long enough. It's 5 or 6 years or something like that. Here it is. It is a variant of the KV-1S, I think. It's an auto-loading heavy tank at Tier 5. Very interesting little tank. You can see it's got the 5 crew members over here. I've actually put my KV-1S crew. It does match the KV-1S. It's very tricky with all the different crew layouts and things, especially with the Soviets. You need to take a look and see which crew you can pop in there. But you've got a commander, gunner, driver, radio operator separate, and a loader. So all 5 of the things that happen in the tank are on separate guys. Nobody is doubled up. So that's not very helpful for a crew that you're trying to train from another tank that may not have a separate radio operator. But in a lot of those cases, even if the radio operator is on, say, the commander or the loader or something, it doesn't really matter. You're in a low tier premium, so you're still getting experience. It's just that your radio operator guy may be cooling his heels. Or potentially, I guess when you're talking about bringing it down to the Tier 5, you'll have the Tier 5 plain old radio operator sitting around doing not much with while your other crew is in its tank. In theory, a rework of the crew system will fix that at some point in the relatively near future. We shall see. I did take a look at this really quickly as far as the details, and this is the idea of the autoloader was actually something that this fella GV Barabash came up with and had worked with the 76mm to do an autoloader system. There was still a loader in the tank with this, so it wasn't fully automated, but it did allow it to shoot fairly quickly, at least in terms of his plan or his, what would you call it here? He called it his suggestion. I don't know how far the suggestion got, but like a lot of these tanks, we're talking about some plans that were maybe on a napkin, all the way up to maybe even getting to the drafting board. As it was, the 76mm gun was overshadowed by later guns, the 85, and bigger guns, the 122, etc. So it never really came to be, essentially. There is some speculation that potentially some of these ideas or suggestions made it into autoloading mechanisms later down the line in the 50s and 60s. What we have, though, is a Tier 5 on the KV-1-esque hull. You can see over here I'm rocking a 110 damage, 110 penetration. We'll get to a comparison in just a minute. With my crew, which has brothers in arms and some of the other things trained, it's not a great crew. It's only got, what, 1 2/3 skills. We're looking at 1599 DPM, dispersion at 0.39, aim time at 2.29. You can get that a little bit better. You could run food. That would be helpful as well. You can see I've got vents, a turbo because this thing is quite slow, and an IA to try to tame the dispersion on the thing. I'm not running food or any directives, and I've got quite a bit of ammo because it carries a lot, but I've got 50 of the AP. Actually, I think it's APCR. It is APCR standard and a gold APCR as its gold round. So let's look in the comparison because there's a couple interesting things here. The tanks that I'm going to compare it with are the KV-220-2, which is a pretty good Russian Tier 5 heavy, the premium Churchill 3, and the premium Excelsior. All of these tanks shoot very quickly. So the Excelsior and the Churchill 3 really feel like auto reloaders because they just keep on firing so fast. KV-220 to some extent is similar. So let's do a quick comparison here. We got a 110 damage for the KV versions. We have 75 for the Churchill, was not much at all, and 110 again for the Excelsior. This tank, this new one, does have the best standard pen at 120 of these 3 tanks. The gold is 150, which is well better than the 220 and the, I believe, Churchill, but the Excelsior, I want to say, is 180. I might be backwards on that. It may be the Churchill, but one of these two has a really good gold round at 180. The reloading thing, remember, this is an auto reloader, so it is not a wait for the whole clip to reload. It will continually be reloading a shell, but if you wait long enough, it'll get, I think it's reverse, or maybe it's, yeah, it's potentially reverse. But eventually, you will get all of your shells reloaded. And it does carry 5 shells in there. Reload total time, then, is 37 seconds, 2.3 between shots, and you've got 5 shots, which is what that is telling us right there. Getting down to the handling itself, the aiming time is pretty long at 2.4, quite painful. You might want to use some equipment to tame that a bit. Dispersion at 0.43 is quite a lot as well. Just remember when I do these comparisons, it's 100% crew without any skills and no equipment. All right, so it's kind of a baseline, but you are getting the, I think it's the commander bonus when you have everybody at 100%, so it'll be a little bit better than just the stock machine without crew in it. Dispersion 0.43 is one of the worst. 220 is a little bit worse. DPM's not bad. It is at the bottom end of these, and that's one of those things you get with an auto reloader, although that's kind of funny because some of these things are really reloading quickly. If we go back to their actual reloads up here, it's 4.1 for the 220, 2.19 for the Churchill, and 3.64 for the Excelsior. That is extremely quick. So even if you wait to reload your auto reloader with all 5 shells, you're still only getting 1,530 DPM. These other 3 just feel like they can drop a lot more pain a lot faster. Pretty much because they can. When we get to survivability, this is interesting. It is a KV hull, KV-1S, I guess, hull, which means that it's got kind of crappy hull armor at 75, and the turret's not amazing at 82. So this is not a KV-220 or Churchill, or even to some extent a Excelsior idea, where that whole turret, or that whole armor and somewhat turret armor is going to hold up pretty well. It's the worst. It's the worst of these 4. All right, so be very careful with this thing, thinking you're going to do a lot of bouncing. It is tier 5, so 4s and sometimes the other 5s will have trouble if they don't dab 2. Still, it's not great armor on this thing. Be careful with that. The speed's okay at 43 because I believe since it's on the 1S kind of chassis, it's a little bit faster. So it is outdistancing the 220. Obviously, the Churchill is slow as molasses, and it still gets the Excelsior too, which feels like a fairly zippy heavy, actually. So not too bad on that. The whole traverse, whole traverse is pretty good, and the turret traverse is up here somewhere. I don't know. Where the heck is it? I can't find it. Doesn't matter. It's really something. It's something. I don't know where it is. Anyway, concealment, who cares? It's a heavy tank. 320 view range is awful. Not quite as bad as the 310, which is behind my little graphic there, of the 220, but it's nowhere near the Churchill and the Excelsior, which are at 350. So it is quite blind. So interesting thing right here. You look at this, you go, oh, it's a auto-loading tier 5, or auto-reloading tier 5. Should be able to punch down some pain on people, and kind of, but you've got to hit. It's derpy. You got a pen. Pen's okay. If you dab 2, dab 2 is going to be expensive. So you got that going on. And even if you do everything right with your auto reloader, you're still only getting 1,530 DPM, which is okay. And when you consider, 5 times 110 is about, what, 650 hit points average damage if all of them hit and all of them pen and you get an average roll. I don't know. It's a little bit anemic. I mean, on the surface of it, you look at it and go, wow, that's pretty awesome. And then in practice, it's okay. It's okay. Strange departure, I think, for Wargaming from going from 6s, what they've been giving us, down to a 5. But it is unique, I will say that. So let's take a quick look at some gameplay. I've only played it a few times. And good luck with it, man. I don't know. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. All right, gameplay on the KV-1SA. KV-1SA auto loader reloader. As you can see, it's 5 shells. They load fairly quickly. Got all 5 in there. What are we doing here? We got 35 APCR and 50 of the regular AP and 5 HE shells. Although at this caliber, the AP is not going to be very useful. We're here on Berlin. We've got several other KV-1SAs. This was early on when it just came out, so everybody was playing them. And you can see that it's kind of a seal clubbing tier 5 and tier 4. My team gets really aggressive and pushes in. I like that, but I'm going to hold off a little bit. Kind of sit back here. There we go. So now we've got this guy. He dives down. My team's pushing in, and I'm getting a little bit antsy now. I really want to get in there and get some hit points. And this is the kind of game you're really wanting with this tank. Snapshots are going to be very difficult. That guy dies, gets shot in the back. There's a Chaffee in the middle. I want to avoid getting shot by him too much. Now I see this other guy coming in. Now we're going to go ahead and put the auto reloader to use. A couple bounces. These are just poor shots. There we go. Well, that actually got into the angle a bit. That would have gone a lot better if I would have calmed down and taken better aim. It's something I think that a lot of people do with auto loaders and auto reloaders is get a little antsy and trying to drop the damage downrange. Notice the reload's going. So as I'm repositioning, it's cruising along. I'm already up to 3 shells. So that really gets you back in the fight pretty quickly. I'll go right past the Stug there. Back out and see if we can get a shot. So we'll aim in here nicely. Get a shot on him. And 2. So if you aim nicely, okay, it's a decent accuracy. We'll shift away from there. The nice thing about an auto reloader is after you take a couple shots, you can start to reposition. You don't have to worry about hitting C to force a reload or anything like that. It just automatically starts reloading, so you can move to your next firing position and let that thing do what it's going to do. Looking for a shot there, but he goes away, and then we have a 1SA. We have an Excelsior. Take a bit of a chance on that. 2 kind of crummy shots. Reloaded right back to 3. An Excelsior fires about as fast as I do. I'd really like to get rid of this SA. I got to be careful about walking in between both those guys. I don't want the SA hitting me from one side and the Excelsior from the other. Like I said, the Excelsior reloads so fast, it's like an auto reloader itself. Although it never has to pause to reload everything. It just keeps plop, 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 plop. This SA is busy pointing at somebody else. Notice his turret's not even looking at me. That's just a plain old mess. We'll just let that zoom in. There we go. Finally get a shot in on him. Trying to get up under the armor there. It'd be really nice if I get a track at the same time, but I don't manage that. I back him out of there. More than likely he's trying to reload. We'll come around the corner there and put one more on the Excelsior. I need to wait. This is another trick about the auto reloaders is don't lean too far forward in trying to take that first shot when it reloads. It's better to get a few more in there reloaded so you can just kind of start plopping it on them. Need to go after the turret. There we go. I'm trying to figure out the green. Like, where am I going to get a shot on this guy? My buddy blocks me a little bit. That's okay. Shoot him again, and we'll back out. In fact, I think I went 1 too early on that. I may not have been completely reloaded with all 5. One of the reasons I'm starting to think about shooting the first one now is they're really collapsing, so I'm just trying to get the hit points that I can get. But I think in that case right there, I could have waited. I would already have probably about 3 shells right now, but he backs out. Now that the Excelsior is getting beat up, I'm going to move in. I don't think I'm going to... No, dang it. See, that's what I'm talking about. Everybody else ate those hit points. Now I'm going to try to turn back around and see if I can get the SA shot in the back, and I believe I do. We'll just go this way. I know that I can come around the other side of these buildings. If I look down to the south, the Hetzer and the Stewart are down there, and that means we're only missing another Stewart somewhere. If he shows up, we can engage him, no problem. More than likely, this guy's staring at those guys and not at me. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to let that zoom nicely in. He's not taking any damage. Right now, he doesn't even realize he's being shot. He starts to go around. I'm going to track him. Oh, dang it. Put it in the turret. There we go. He's going to get away. Oh, son of a... I mean... That's kind of frustrating, right? I'm getting the hit points. So instead of turning his armor to me and trying to engage me, he drives... Instead of just being shot by me, he just drives out in front of all of them. Fantastic. I don't even know if we find the... I don't remember. Do we find this guy or not? I don't think so. I think this is all the damage I'm going to get. Let's just speed this up a little bit and see where they find him. Is he actually back here? I don't think so. I'm trying to remember where he shows up. Maybe he doesn't show up. He doesn't. Never shows up. He hides. So there you go. A little bit of gameplay. KV-1SA. It's about what you'd expect. An auto reloader. It's a bit derpy. You've got to do all the auto reloader things as far as managing the shells to maximize the amount of DPM that you're going to get out of the tank. Sometimes you do want to use that shell before you're completely reloaded. Say you want to shut someone down, or it's a dangerous situation, or it's the last hit points. Those are just some examples. But generally, you want to be a little bit more methodical than I was. This is one of my first games, so I'm just kind of trying to see how everything works with it. And I just tend to be a little too over exuberant at times. Excuse me, with my auto reloaders and auto loading tanks. So a little bit more care there, and I probably could have squeezed out a few more hit points, especially with some better care and aiming on there, because I got quite a few bounces on just kind of aiming poorly or taking shots a little prematurely. But there you go, some gameplay for the KV-1SA. We'll wrap it up. Well, all right, there you go. A little bit of gameplay. Talked about some of the mistakes I made in there. Auto reloaders, you do have to have a little care with the way you play with them. It's easy to make mistakes and decrease your DPM or DPG, however you want to look at it, possible DPM and the actual DPG by making those little mistakes. Decently mobile tank, can kind of get in where it needs to go as a heavy, and I would say average to maybe slightly above average, depending on how try-hard you want to go with it. If you want to throw a lot of equipment at it and skills on guys and things like that, you can turn this into kind of a little beast down at tier 5. I don't know why you would do that, but I suppose you could. Seal clubbers may end up loving this thing. We'll see what happens in 6 months, whether there's a lot of these still running around. Right now, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting one at tier 5, but that's everybody playing them. We'll see where it kind of pans out at the end. So I think average to slightly above average. Thanks for coming and checking out my quick review on the KV-1SA. I hope you guys liked that. Give me a thumbs up if you did. Maybe even a subscribe. That's all I've got. We will see ya.